Welcome to the Happier Life Project, the official podcast from the award-winning mental health and wellness app, My Possible Self. Hosted by broadcaster and journalist Gabby Sanderson.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me today. So many of us move through life feeling trapped by our own patterns. Habits we didn't choose, routines we don't like, and behaviours that seem to run on autopilot. Whether it's emotional eating, scrolling ourselves numb, drinking more than we meant to, or repeating the same relationship dynamics, it can feel as if our habits have more power than we do. In this episode, we're breaking that illusion wide open. We're exploring how change actually happens, why willpower alone isn't the answer, and how compassion, not punishment, can help us interrupt old cycles and reclaim a sense of control over our lives. Today on the Happier Life Project, I'm delighted to be joined by Shahroo Izadi, a behavioural change specialist, psychologist and best-selling author whose work has transformed how thousands of people understand habit change, addiction and self-development. Shahroo has spent over a decade working at the forefront of behavioural change, including within NHS addiction services and as relapse prevention lead at Amy's Place, the Amy Winehouse Foundation's recovery house for young women. She is also author of 3 books, including 2 Amazon #1 bestsellers, and is widely known for her kindness method, a powerful, self-compassionate based framework that helps people build sustainable habits without shame, self-criticism, or restriction. At the heart of Shahroo's work is a simple but radical idea. Lasting change doesn't come from punishment or willpower alone, but from understanding ourselves more deeply and working with, rather than against, our behaviour. In today's conversation, we explore what really drives change, from the myths we've been taught about habit formation to the emotional and environmental factors that shape our choices every day. Shahroo also shares why relapse is not failure, why readiness matters more than motivation, and how self-compassion can be one of the most effective tools for transformation. Women's Health has called Shahroo Britain's answer to Brené Brown, and she has recently appeared on some extremely high-profile podcasts, including Diary of a CEO and Davina McCall's Begin Again. But in this episode, Shahroo brings it all back to something deeply practical: how we actually make change stick in real life without losing ourselves in the process. So if you've ever felt stuck in patterns you can't seem to shift, when you know they're not good for you and you've read all the self-help books, or you're frustrated by the gap between wanting to change and actually being able to stick at it, this conversation offers a grounded, hopeful, and deeply human way forward. So, ready to find a healthier, happier you? Let's get started. Welcome, Shahroo, to the Happier Life Project podcast. I'm super excited to be talking to you. Also, super thrilled that you've come on. I know you've done some very high profile podcasts of late. I'll try to live up to the bar. Before we really sort of get into it, I'd love you to explain to our listeners and app users, what exactly is a behavioural change specialist?
Thank you. Thank you for having me as well. It was the closest I could come to explaining what I do. I'm a psychologist and I was working in substance misuse, so as a key worker. And when I started being asked to help people with day-to-day habits, as opposed to the more sort of serious, sharp-end ones, like highly addictive drugs, I started to realize that my specialism is very much in just enabling people to change behaviors. I think a lot of the time with coaching, for example, the plan is a lot more part of it. and the accountability is a lot more part of it. And my job when I was working, whether it was in the NHS or in community services or prison services, was actually to make myself redundant as quickly as possible to people so that dependency wasn't something that disempowered them anymore.
Okay.
And so as such, I started thinking, what am I an expert in? And more, it was essentially just helping people to change any behavior. And I didn't want to pigeonhole myself, because really I believe that the same tools enable us to change anything, provided we can treat behavioral change as skill building.
I think it was on the Diary of a CEO podcast, and I'm going to kind of repeat it because I think it's so true. You said to Stephen, like, behind you, you've got all these books in the self-help world, and it's like, we know when things are wrong for us, like, and there is resources out there, and yet people still have this real struggle with change. So could we talk a little bit about this, please, and like how your method of kindness seems to be more effective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make when it comes to wanting to change is that we assume that desire and like desperation and our why is what's going to get us there. And very often that means that we're starting from a place of not feeling very resourced internally or externally. We're fed up with ourselves. We don't feel super capable, which is very, very helpful to feel capable when you're about to embark on something difficult. And second of all, we tend to assume that our motivation won't waver. And even if it does, that will be fine, because we'll be able to hold in mind this really aspirational outcome. And that's just not how behavioral change works. Behavioral change is hard. So you're going to have to do something unfamiliar in a row until it feels easy. And how long that takes for each person it will vary wildly based on the person and the circumstances and what behavior they are trying to change. But the other thing is that fixing yourself or aspiring to not be as bad as you currently are is just not the space from which it's easy to make difficult decisions. And I always tell people, if it's a goal, like with a finite outcome, like I want to save some money to go on holiday in a few months, and therefore I will forego these short-term comforts on this occasion to that end, then fine. But when it comes to behavioral change, there is no extraordinary outcome a lot of the time. In fact, a lot of the time we don't know that we've changed until we go back to our old ways, because success is very much the absence of those behaviors that we're not happy with anymore. You know, when you think about learning to use an app or whatever else, you don't think, oh, look at me, I'm so much better at that. It's just automated, you know? You don't have a party to celebrate the fact that you're so much quicker at using your, I don't know, Duolingo or whatever else. And so we need to treat behavioral change much like that, and remember that hating ourselves into change is just not the one.
Okay. So what do you think then drives the choices of people when they are doing things that are going against their best interest? Like, I mean, I suppose there's not one answer to this, is there? But like, I mean, I think some kind of self-soothing is often the case.
Yeah, I think when somebody wants to change a habit and it's making them unhappy and they feel powerless and they know that the outcomes are negative, they know more than anyone what the downsides are. They're living them. They're aware that other people are aware of them. Often they feel stupid and weak-willed and powerless. So first of all, reinforcing those things and increasing their levels of shame, again, it's just not conducive to helping a person to do something hard and believe in themselves and feel worthy of this outcome.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, a lot of the time, because we focus on the negatives, we forget that there are reasons why we engage in behaviors. And very often what's become a problematic behavior began as a solution to something. So, for example, a lot of people increased, their alcohol intake increased during COVID. And I speak to loads of people who found that during COVID, they were stressed, they were, bored a lot of the time, or other coping strategies for things like stress and boredom and anxiety, which had increased, understandably so, were not available to the same degree. Usually the healthier ones, the gym, whatever else, connecting with other people. As such, alcohol was doing heavier lifting. it was solving a problem. It was enabling them to manage with stress and anxiety and boredom. But what happened is that their tolerance increased. And so by the end of it, they were drinking considerably more than they would have done before. So unless there's an intervention of some kind at that point for themselves, they're just going to carry on as they were, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when it's become a problem, because you're opening a second bottle. But it was a solution. It began as a solution. And I think that looking at it that way can help us enormously, because it makes us feel less sort of stupid and self-hating. And, you know, the things that people tell me, like, am I trying to sabotage myself? I know this is bad for me. Why am I doing it?
Yeah.
And I'll often say to them, like, you're just going to carry on doing what you were doing until you interrupt that pattern. And with alcohol, that's a big one. People say, why am I doing this? And it's like, have you seen how quickly alcohol can change the way you feel? It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And so more and more, we want to look not only at what's strong. You know, we used to say in addiction treatment, look at what's strong, not what's wrong. And I know people like Gabor Mate, who I really admire, talk about this as well, is, you know, look at the reason why people are doing things, not the reason why they're not stopping them. Really.
Yeah, I think there's so many people in the camp as well of like, I don't really drink at all. It's incredibly rare. I mean, to each their own, but like I get terrible hangovers, so I'd just rather not. But like, I know a lot of people that fall into the camp of like enjoying a couple of glasses of wine at the end of the day or a few beers. And to them, it might relax them or whatever, but they don't feel like too crazy. And they say to me or to themselves, well, I could stop, but I just enjoy it. And I know it's not really great for me, but I just enjoy it. Like for people in that camp, like in terms of the behavior, are they kidding themselves? Are they addicted?
I don't know. I think if you really want to stop doing something and you keep trying and you're not managing to, then regardless of the word that you're calling it, I like to call it feeling powerless. I think the word sort of addiction and dependency, and A, it can scare people. B, I've seen people both, you know, physically and behaviourally, if you like, addicted to things when, you know, one person is not addicted and they're using far more in terms of dosage and frequency. So it tends to be a lot more about what that person is trying to get from the substance as it is about literally how much they're using or literally, you know, things like that. And I think that no one drinks thinking this is a healthy thing to do. So I think that kind of goes without saying.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a problem unless it's a problem for you. And certainly I don't think that it aligns with the sort of making people feel empowered and like they're in charge of their own choices and they have a process for always changing up the way that they're behaving or, you know, adjusting the status quo. I don't think it aligns with that for other people to kind of get involved. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate that as a woman who lives alone and whose behavior is impacted by no one and whose behavior impacts no one, that's a different position to be in. So I do get asked a lot, like, what do I do if my partner, you know, it's impacting our lives?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time it's about helping someone to, A, not feel judged about it and letting them have a problem with it for the reasons that they have a problem with it. You know, some people don't want to think about their liver all day. Some people care more about thinking about, I don't know, waking up in the morning so that they can go do something else that they enjoy. So I think finding and not judging people's reasons, even when you're talking about really serious things that they should care about. I mean, we know that adherence to medication, like sometimes life-saving medication, can be quite poor. And so a lot of the time, people are not able to think about the longer term, even if they'd like to. For example, I have ADHD. I find it very hard to care about anything outside of the next now. Okay. So if someone was coming around saying to me, why don't you do this? What about, you know, what about the outcome? What about the outcome? In that moment, I would be there with you and agreeing with you. But all I can tell you is that when I want to change how I feel quickly, it's not going to matter. And so for me thinking, oh, this must mean I don't care about my family and my kids and my life. Yeah. Again, goes back to the shame thing that doesn't help. And when you feel shame a lot of the time, you want to engage in the habit that you're trying to change the feeling of shame. So it just becomes, you know, the cycle that we're aware of.
I heard you say on another podcast, we're all a certain number of steps away from becoming dependent on something. And so I thought that really landed as well, because that's, again, through the compassionate lens, isn't it? When we're thinking not just about ourselves, but about other people. Yeah, maybe people that do have a drink or whatever. But I also couldn't help but think when you were talking about alcohol, how this also, it kind of relates to food as well. And maybe it's the sugar thing, because sugar's so highly addictive. It can be the same solution if it's boredom or stress, that people reach for the food much like they would reach for a glass or a bottle of something. To be able to make better choices, do we have to look deeper into like our emotions?
Sometimes. I think better choices for us, I think it's about thinking, is this a choice that serves me short term and long term? Tends to be a useful question to ask yourself. But rather than thinking it's going to be a really deep process, I think it can help to think that we are all experiencing emotions on a day-to-day, that are proportionate responses, whether it's to what's going on in the world or highly stressful lives or just anything, real life, and that we will want to reach for things to change how we feel. And I think a lot of the time, the mistake we make is that often when we're behaving in ways and we're like, am I possessed? Like, why would I do this? It doesn't even make me feel good. Not only does it not serve me in the long term, I don't even feel good now doing it. Very often we forget that we're not, in that moment, we're not being that discerning. We're not trying to feel good. We're trying to feel differently. And it is succeeding in doing that. Whether it's distraction, whether it's ultra-processed food and the high we get from it, whether it's booze and like legitimately changes how you feel and, a glass of wine. But I think a lot of people think that if we talk about feelings, it's going to be that we're uncovering some deep-seated self-loathing. And listen, maybe you are. Don't get me wrong. But I find that before you assume that, and it can often be very scary to assume that that's the case, when someone like me is like, well, why are you doing it? What about your feelings? Yeah. Is to assume that ultimately you're always engaging in habits. Like always. You're never not engaging in a habit. Even if you're doing nothing, you've got a habit of doing nothing. And so what you want to think about is that the habits you're currently engaging in, either you've chosen or they've been chosen for you because you haven't chosen them. And so more and more, everything is learned ultimately. And what I meant by us all being a certain number of steps away from becoming dependent on something is that there's this idea of addictive personality, which we know there isn't an evidence base for, but we know that some people are more addiction vulnerable. Yeah. But I would argue that now, more than ever, it doesn't really matter to that degree, because all of us are addiction vulnerable because of the things that are engineered in the environment to hook us, whether it's frictionless tech, whether it's ultra-processed food, the normalization of drinking that we know has been going on for ages. So I think more and more what we want to do is to assume that we're all vulnerable to some degree, and that we all have feelings that we're going to want to change, and that we have some agency in deciding how we're going to change those feelings. And now I am no fearmonger at all. Like, I really, really am not into it. And I think that the way to look at it now in terms of all the addictive things around and all the frictionless access to things is that there's also frictionless access to all the stuff we'd prefer to be doing. It's just that requires us to go out and look for it. Frictionless access to this yoga class, this online, this whatever it is, this healthy hack, whatever. That requires us to go look for it. And the frictionless access to the things that want to hook us, that maybe we don't feel better for having engaged in, is kind of designed to come look for us now. Yeah, exactly. So that's all I want us to be kind of vigilant of that. But yeah.
What's the difference you see in people from somebody who wants to change versus somebody who's ready genuinely to change?
It's hard to find someone who doesn't want to change something. Yeah. Ideal world. Yeah. It's hard to find a person who you found today who either doesn't have traits isn't fair, actually. That could be more genetic behaviors and default behaviors and habits and patterns that they would definitely have chosen themselves, given the choice. And so I would argue that wanting to change is kind of there. The whole, what's your why? I think, well, that's implicit. Adults don't put themselves in discomfort unless there's a reason, But I think being ready to change, in my opinion, is not about willpower or things get hard enough. And it's not about rock bottom. Unless it's a really extreme situation, like in the context where rock bottom works. Even in those, I've seen people have multiple rock bottoms before, But also, again, this rock bottom thinking is that, things have got so bad. I feel so horrible about myself. I have so few resources left, internal and external, that I'm going to change. And from my perspective, again, unless the stakes are incredibly high, where actually fear does become a motivator at the really sharp end, then that kind of, if I really wanted to, I would change, is actually something that can increase shame and then increase the need to want to default onto the habits we want to stop engaging in. So I think readiness for change, anyone who wants to kind of look into this also, when I was learning motivational interviewing, there were some really interesting graphs on importance and confidence and how increasing importance and confidence can help us to understand where we are in terms of readiness to change. So how important is it for us and how confident are we that we can?
Okay.
From my perspective, it's about really believing in the simplicity, that it's simple but not easy. So I think that readiness to change comes when you have faith in the fact that if you do something in a row, you'll get to where you want to be. And to start assuming that there will be moments where it's difficult, and accounting for those moments, as opposed to thinking wanting to change enough will suffice. It's like, I think a lot of the time, because the habits we want to change seem very objectively simple.
Okay.
We know how to do them. We know we should be doing them.
Yeah.
We forget that learning how to do them is a new skill. So you wouldn't tell yourself, I should be able to drive as of tomorrow because everyone else can drive already. And I think that if we give ourselves the permission to see skill building and the skill of keeping things up as a skill that we're building, then being ready for change or ready to change is being ready to meet those moments where we want to give up and having a plan for them. And it doesn't need to be a practical plan. The plan can be reminding yourself, this is that bit that wasn't going to be easy that I'm going to get through, because that's how skill building works.
So do you have any suggestions for if anybody's listening and has something that they'd love to change? That trigger moment where, let's say, boredom, and you might want to suddenly get on your choice favourite online shopping thing and maybe buy something when it's not really the best thing to do, or something you want to indulge in, something sweet, and it comes from like boredom, procrastination. You sort of got that urge. What do you do with it? Because like sitting in the uncomfortable, do you just have to go through it, or do you try and distract yourself? Like how would you advise?
When people suggest that you should meditate instead of go on an app or eat Haribo's, I just think, I don't know what sort of person you are. Yeah. Not just because I'm not that sort of person, but that sort of person doesn't come to find me for my help ever. No. So I've never heard of anyone going, you know what, I was really, really stressed. My children were giving me a really hard time. And rather than sit down and eat some Cadbury's and watch Married at First Sight, I decided to meditate. Exactly. I just don't know that person, Gabby. Yeah, I don't know them.
Exactly.
But one thing I will say is that if you look at it this way, that all of your habits are learned and all of your habits can be unlearned. And for as long as you're repeating them, you're getting better at them. So what you can start to repeat is the mastery of delaying them. So let's say, for example, you're stressed and you want to start having a bath instead of eating all the chocolate.
Yeah.
Have a bath and tell yourself you'll eat all the chocolate. You can have whatever you like. First of all, start pushing in the preferable habits before you start taking away your buddies that have been serving you just because they're bad. And I think what you'll also find a lot of the time when you do that, when you tell yourself, I can do what I want, is you step into a more adult version of yourself, because ultimately we can all do what we like, right? If we're not harming anyone else, we tend to just kind of end up doing what we like anyway.
Yeah.
So I think what it can help to do is to say, I'm going to do what I like, but I'm going to give it a minute. And what that helps with is it helps to bring to our attention how frequently, when there is a habit that we're not happy with, that we're thinking at some point, I'm just going to stop doing this because it's bad, that we are using that, call it self-medicating, soothing, changing how you feel, whatever, that we are using it if we are 1 out of 10 stressed or 10 out of 10 stressed, because we're in this last hurrah mentality. So you might find that when you're 10 out of 10 stressed, you want to have Haribo's and that's fine. But if you start pushing in the baths and the meditation or whatever before you have the Haribo's, you'll notice that sometimes you want to have half half the Haribos, you know?
Yeah.
That's where you want to start thinking about it as doing a job for you without judgment. And then little by little, you start getting a temperature of where you're at. You know, am I 2 out of 10 stressed? Am I 8 out of 10 stressed? But when we demonize these behaviors and assume that one day we won't do them and we'll just be good, it's amazing how even a tiny bit of stress that either, you could sit through and breathe through and you'd be fine. That sense of deprivation and desperation and this is the last time makes it far less likely for you to want to do the bath thing or wait 20 minutes or whatever. And again, I find that telling yourself you're not going to do something when you really, really want to, unless it's a finite thing you want to change and the cravings and the urges and the need is going to go away at some point, then it can be worth thinking, no, I do whatever I like. It's just that sometimes I choose not to do this thing. And saying that a few times in a row will help you to understand the dependency or the urge. And also, for me, for example, I'm just as easily distracted in other directions. So, for example, yesterday I was really, really stressed. I wanted to go eat dinner early, which I know is not a good idea for me because it means I then have another meal at like 11 p.m. and it just messes with my sleep and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I decided I would do what I like, but I just went and turned on the shower. I didn't say I was going to take a shower because that felt too healing and remedial and just not as yummy as what I was about to do. So I just turned on the shower. Before I knew it, I was in the shower. I felt a little bit better, you know? And so that urgency, that impulse, the I'm possessed, I have to do it right now. If you can take the edge off that first, it can help enormously.
Yeah, it is almost like you are possessed, isn't it? When you get those cravings, for sure. I mean, I noticed recently I was in India and my whole lifestyle, as you can imagine, changed. I was teaching yoga and mindfulness at a school for underprivileged girls in a very remote location, living at the school. So all my creature comforts were suddenly gone. But then I also did realize on reflection afterwards, so did a lot of my bad habits. And also like my general wellness, I think, and state of mind improved drastically. And I figured out, because I also live alone, and I thought, wow, a big part of this is community. Because at first it was like I was sharing a room with another yoga teacher. She did end up becoming like a sister, but like it was a guest house. So we had like a housekeeper, and then teachers would come in the day. We were never left alone, really. And it was a bit of an adjustment at first, but then actually it was like, I noticed a really good one. And then coming back to today's theme and behaviours and the state of the world and people's worlds, specifically in the Western one, I think loneliness is huge. We are working now through a screen, and it definitely has its pros for sure, but also that connection, and we do want these dopamine hits. We do want like these momentarily relief of feeling just something, I think. So like, I wonder what your thoughts are there.
First of all, the community and the connection piece is really important because, again, like we were saying earlier, like with the COVID example, if the habits you're not happy with to change how you feel are successfully changing how you feel, then loneliness is one of the things that you're going to be looking to change as a feeling. The other thing I would say, based on what you said, is that it sounds like you were put in an environment where you were able to repeat new behaviors. Yeah. Granted, to some degree, because the frameworks were there, right? So there were some people who would see what your experience as seeing that there was an element of accountability. Initially, if you look at it just from a behavioral change perspective, right? Exactly, if you just look at it as, we just want to do it in a row till it's easy. How can I make this person do it in a row till they forget it was even hard? And it sounds like that was a perfect environment, even from a cynical force someone to change something, that you were in an environment where there was another person. And a lot of the time when we want to change our habits, we don't have as much respect for ourselves and what we're seeing. I'm not saying this is you, by the way. But I often tell people it's really important to care how you behave when no one's watching. So you and I, we live alone. So presumably we've had to care how we behave when no one's watching, right? But that's really hard for a lot of people. Yeah. To really be accountable to themselves, especially in the early parts, even if it's that you've been eating sugar every single day and you're going through the first 4 or 5 days of withdrawal, right? if you're kind of in an environment that enables / forces you to do that, then you get to stick with it and repeat the absence of that behavior or the replacement of that behavior for long enough to actually notice the benefits of it. A lot of people have so many false starts that they've forgotten whether there will actually be any benefits or indeed how long it will take them before they feel them anyway. And the other thing I'd say is, I completely agree. I think a lot of the disconnection that we want to not feel anymore, we fill with, again, those behaviors and substances that are there lurking, literally waiting for us. Now literally designed to compel us personally now.
Yeah.
And there is no replacement for human connection. Truly, truly, truly. That is my faith, with everything going on. That's the greatest faith that I have, because I don't know anyone, unless there are real reasons why, around disability, around anxiety, legitimate reasons why you can't or don't want to leave the house and all of these things. For the most part, I find that people feel better for having been in close contact with another human being. And I know that sounds, the fact I'm saying that like it's a wild thing is extraordinary. Like it's this really strange, like, please engage with another human. But for example, I did a sort of IRL event a few weeks ago, and it's just incomparable, like to see human beings and to stand in front of them and to connect with them and look into their eyes. Like even now where I'm speaking to you, I can see myself. I can see there's all these different distractions. Even if I don't want there to be, I'm making such a concerted effort to make sure that I'm listening to every single word you say. I mean, aside from anything else, it's much heavier lifting, than just being present with a human. Yeah. And so I can totally understand that. And I think also loneliness is a word that gets a bad rep. And it's assumed, I think that because I'm a woman and I live alone. So I kind of feel like the next bit is you sad old lady kind of thing, But I find that I feel most lonely when I don't necessarily have to connect with humans on a really personal or deep level. It's just being amongst people who are getting on with their lives, even. Yeah,
I would agree. Yeah. Yeah,
it's
definitely.
Nice to see. Just civilization happening. Again, this shouldn't be a renegade thing to say.
Exactly. It's so true. It's so true, because I noticed as well I was being so active in India because I was with the kids teaching yoga, and kids yoga is more about play and games and whatever. 4 classes a day, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement and everything. So I was absolutely buzzing, but also I got into a habit with the other yoga teacher of like at sunset, because it was beautiful and all the kids had gone by this point, we would do our own workout. We were yogaed out by that point, but like she got me into Joe Wicks a bit, because I was like, no, I hate HIIT, absolutely not. But then she was doing it, so I was like, all right, I'll do it with something to do, because we couldn't really venture out of the school gates. So it became something that I actually now am trying to continue, because I felt such great benefits. And like it did make, and again, it's no like major profound thing, is it? Wow, movement makes you feel good. But actually it was more like being active, just remembering to get up and move around. And like, we're just at a screen, aren't we? And it's like, it does go against our basic making as a human being. We should be moving. We should be in communities. It's like, but this world we live in now, I think, is more and more being designed to keep us in a way sick.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I also think that having all this information about the healthy, good stuff to do makes it so that before we stop and learn how to stop doing the objectively unhealthy stuff, we move straight to the overly complicated biohacking, lemon in the water, intense. And it's like, have you been outside? And I'm speaking to myself, by the way. I'll be like, it can't be that simple. And it's extraordinary. It's the times when I'm watching podcasts and like being like, which supplement? And it's like, Shahroo, have you had a glass of water? Like in the last few hours? Maybe start with that. And a lot of the time we try to create these like really healthy habits before we've got rid of the unhealthy ones. And so the current we're swimming against is much stronger when you do that. So I think more and more when people like me here go back to basics, go for a walk, drink, I'm so bored by that concept. Like it makes me, it's like snore. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I wish I'd known before is that if I build those habits for like a few days, before you know it, I can be just as ambitious as I like. I can do the biohacking, all the supplements, all of that stuff. Yeah. It's just the foundations on which we start often are going from a last hurrah of like total extremes.
Yeah.
And then a place of withdrawal, like physical or behavioral withdrawal. And then we're expecting ourselves to do all these healthy things, like, I don't know, go from having pancakes for breakfast to having like a disgusting green juice. And it gives us a completely skewed idea of A, what it is to change behaviors, B, how much easier it can be to change behaviors. Yeah, if you create the foundations on which it's easier. So, for example, before I taught myself how to drink water regularly, if I told you the number of times I purchased electrolytes, or looked up like what helps you be less dehydrated, because it felt too basic and boring. But I wish I could tell people, like, do the basic boring thing for a few days, because the habit that you're trying to build is not specifically I want to drink more water. It's I keep things up. When you are in the habit of believing that you keep things up and you know how to keep things up, and you lend yourself to you just hand yourself over to do it in a row and it'll get easier like everything else. Yeah. Then you remind yourself, I'm someone who keeps things up. Yeah. And then you can level it up like me and decide that you're going to go to like the hardest spin class. But I was deciding to go to the hardest spin class after having not left the house for like 3 days, or like moved from watching whatever I was watching. And so I think having that sort of bridge period can help enormously. And for anyone who listens to this and thinks, oh, so boring, I'm telling you, it is a fast track to doing the less boring stuff. And keeping it up, because the foundations on which you're doing it are not depleted and desperate and withdrawing.
Yeah. I really like that about the bridge thing. And I can't help but think about when you were talking about the green juice versus the light pancakes and being too... I think about my mum, who I said to her once, how long have you been on a diet for? And she said all of her life. But like she goes extreme and then can't keep it up. And then, goes the opposite way. And I don't need to tell you about this. Obviously, you've got so much experience in this field, but like it is that kind of extremities where you are kind of just never going to crack it, really, if you want to say you're cracking your... It's just, for me, I'm just like, it's nourishment for your body. So why would you like starve yourself so manically, but then I know other people have different thoughts on this. Sorry, I'm trying to be careful with my words and I'm sounding a bit bumbly.
No. Not at all. I think what you're describing is really common. I think a lot of the people who we know, myself included, who spent a long time becoming experts in dieting are the ones who find it the most difficult to manage what they eat, let alone manage their weight. I think the issue is that we've really, to come to the beginning of this conversation, when you're chasing an outcome, a one-off outcome, it's okay. I mean, not okay, but it can work to do unrealistic things that don't stick because there's a finite outcome. And what you're doing with dieting is that the outcome that you're going for is looking differently. And so when you get there, you assume, because of everything we've been told about how great it is to be thin and how smart and amazing and delightful thin people are, that it will extend to knowing how to eat, knowing how to shop, knowing how to cook differently, and you know what? Not even wanting to eat, because you don't want to ruin how great and thin you are. And whilst I don't want us to suffer, or anyone to suffer that way, obviously, I'm kind of glad we're not capable of doing that. I'm kind of glad that people don't get the same deliciousness from looking in the mirror and losing all this weight as they would from eating a burger. And that in the end, the body is like, no, the compliments have died down and I am hungry and that is delicious. So I think the issue with it really is that the outcome that you want to work towards is making it easy to eat differently, not easy to stay thin and look thin. And ultimately, they're the same thing for a lot of people, myself included. But the mastery that you're building is not the mastery towards a smaller body. It's the mastery towards a different way of eating. So I always tell people who want to lose weight, if you were trying to be a vegan, it would be the same process. The difference is, because there wouldn't be all this moral judgment wrapped up in it because it's in the pursuit of being this acceptable, popular, gorgeous, sexy person or whatever you think you're going to be at the end. When you didn't manage to be a perfect vegan, you wouldn't think, oh, I must not want veganism enough. You know, I knew I'd never, you'd be like, well, yeah, I'm learning how to be one. You know, I'm learning. That wasn't delicious, but I'll try next time, whatever else. And so you give yourself some leeway to be skill building.
Yeah.
And so what I would say is that for people who do have that complicated relationship with food, diets did that to you by giving you the hardest possible
framework,
I guess, framework. And also, you know, if I told you, it's just very abstract to say, look, if you change this thing over here today and you suffer for it,
yeah,
then in a few days or a week or a month, you may or may not see this thing over here, which is objectively unrelated, benefiting your life because you happen to live in the Western world. It's just strange. You know, I think it's strange, but I keep talking about it so many times. That and the fact that we have to be told at some point what you're eating is making your body bigger. And that's bad. So then we have to reverse engineer that message. But I don't know when we would discover that ourselves. And it certainly wouldn't be as early as we're told it, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's just not how behavioural change works, aside from anything else.
Yeah. Well, I've got to follow up and ask you about the diet drugs that are now so accessible, aren't they? And then, oh my God, you just need to look on the Daily Mail showbiz news, and then you're getting images of gaunt-looking celebrities that are very clearly on. And it's just, it's this influence again, isn't it? It's this projection of like, this is what success looks like. I do really worry about not just the message that's sending, but also the fact it does seem to be like super easy to get. I mean, I know somebody that was like a size 12 that got her hands on them after having a baby. And she was like, no, but I'm usually like, you know, an 8 or a 10 because she's little. She was like, I don't have time. She was very busy. Got a lot of pressure at work, and then 2 kids. She was like, I don't have time to go to the gym and do all these things that you're told to like get back to that body, but I also don't want to be in the body I'm in, kind of thing. So she was able to, you know, get off the doctor these drugs. And I'm just like, a lot of people would kill for the figure you've got right now. Just, it very much worries me. And I think it's a behaviour yeah. What do you have to say on that? I'd love to know.
Well, I was going to ask you, just out of curiosity, what worries you about, is it the drugs themselves?
Well, I think there's not enough that we know about them. Yeah. And it worries me. I think it's like thinner people that don't need them are getting their hands on them. And it's ultimately going to result in more eating disorders and people getting sick and ultimately dying. That's what worries me. And it also worries me for the fact, especially young, vulnerable boys and girls, but I think more girls, I assume, that them seeing images of these stick thin celebs that it's just so obvious, you know, to me, at least.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you in that they are likely to bring about new and re-trigger eating disorders. Definitely that. And I think that they will transfer eating disorders. So, you know, for example, the only reason that I would have been diagnosed with binge eating disorder as opposed to anorexia is because I was binging more than I was restricting, but I was still restricting. And so, you know, there's a lot of problematic stuff around how we diagnose eating disorders. But the reason I'm reluctant to poo-poo these things is that, A, I find that a lot of the people who are super anti them have not had serious weight problems or have not had weight problems in the past that have meant that the world has treated them differently to such a degree that they will go to any lengths. The second reason is because I'm annoyed that the same industry that sold us diets that I believe are responsible for binge eating disorder, which contributes to obesity, you know, unwanted obesity, is now selling us a solution to it. Yeah. And so I feel that the people who are going to do that are already feeling like, I would very much prefer not to have to do this. I'd prefer to still enjoy food. I would prefer to feel like I could make decisions and not feel hungry all the time and have food noise all the time. I'd prefer to have been one of those people, and I'd prefer not to be paying out of my own pocket or whatever else. I prefer to be able to sit and enjoy a meal with my friends and not have it go, so I think I'm not an idealist in that sense, because I know the alternative for so many people. I do, however, think that having come out of the other side of it, once you stop taking them, it'll be just like when I had a gastric band, except to some degree worse, I guess, because when I had a gastric band, I was still hungry. So I had to manage that to some degree and understand where my hunger signals were. And I also think that, it's interesting when you say people, if they're at a size which is healthy and they're choosing to do it.
That's my biggest concern. Yeah, is that it's it's getting too accessible. I understand totally. for those that genuinely need it and are putting themselves at risk with their health for being too overweight. I think that's one conversation. But my worry is for the other side of the scale, where it's becoming the perfect solution to an anorexic's brain, or to somebody that's could be teetering that way. Like you said, we're only a few steps away from a new behaviour. And that's my concern.
I would have turned it into an eating disorder. I would have starved myself. So I completely agree with you. I guess the issue for me is that by the time people get to that size, let's say you start at I was like a size 24, 26 at one point. Let's say I use it and I get down to a 12 or a 14 or whatever we decide is healthy for me, right? At that point, unless I keep using it.
Yeah, then what?
Then what? And the other thing is you can become really disillusioned because, again, going back to what we said before, is we've been taught to believe that once you're thin, you won't want to eat, right? Because you're so special and it feels so good and it'll be easier. Don't get me wrong. When I was lighter, it was easier to exercise, certainly. But the powerlessness had only increased when I would use things like appetite suppressants or whatever would simulate what the GLP-1s are doing for my equivalent of it. But I think also what ends up happening is that you're putting it on the person who, by their own admission, has needed to go to these lengths for whatever reason. If it's because they genuinely felt that they were not able to bring down their food intake enough to a degree for their own body that would help them get to where they want to be. But what you're saying to this person, and this is what I find really concerning and I wish more people would talk about, is that once you've lost the weight you want to lose, you're going to be okay with gaining a pound. Now, I know that when I was in the depths of it, I was not okay with gaining a pound. It didn't matter if I weighed very, very little. The psychology of seeing the scale come down quickly and then expecting it to come down quickly, because of the equivalent for me was juice diets or whatever else, is one that is not easy to break. And so the where does it end bit is my issue, much like with an extreme diet. So that's where my concern would come in.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And that makes me think, like, if somebody has alcohol issues, then there's so many programs you can do to keep you on track, right? Like this 12-step AA and stuff. But yeah, if you've been taking the weight loss drugs, then it's like, is there a weight loss support group for the Monjaro? Or,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Yeah. Well, I'm very mindful of time, so I feel like I should kind of start to wrap things up. I'd like to ask you this. How long does it typically take to form a new habit and disengage with unhealthy behaviours? Is that how long is a piece of string?
As long as it takes. As long as it takes to do it in a row for you, for it to get easy. 21 days thing is absolute rubbish.
Okay, so
absolute rubbish.
What about the lapse and the relapse thing? I thought that was quite interesting, that like people are going to fall off the wagon, aren't they? Whatever you're trying to break. And then usually that's that self-loathing part comes in and then you're like, oh, I'll give up. To get back on the wagon if you've fallen off it kind of thing, is there anything you could kind of leave our listeners with there to kind of keep the incentive?
Yes. Assume that you will want to fall off the wagon and don't focus on controlling your first choice. Focus on controlling the second one. What do I do straight after I have fallen off the wagon? And what can help enormously is to do the thing you would do if you were feeling great about yourself and you just made the best choice. Because usually that's a course correct and it comes into our all or nothing thinking and makes us think, oh, I'm being good now. Because our association with that habit is that I've been good, as opposed to I've ruined it, I'm going to spiral now.
Oh, I love that. Is there a common behaviour you see among people that you wish you could change?
Speaking unkindly to themselves. That's mainly the habit that I wish people could change. I wish we could all hear each other and realize that we're not the exception by any means.
Well, what a lovely segue into then pointing people to your book, The Kindness Method, available in all the usual book places. And for more on you and for more resources and stuff, we'll put all the links in the episode show notes. But it's Shahroo Izadi. Am I pronouncing the surname right? Yeah. .co.uk. Instagram is your name, Shahroo_Izadi. Thank you so much for your time today. And this has been so helpful.
Thank you for having me.
Hello friends, it's Gabby back with you. If you are suffering with your mental health, there is a crisis button on the My Possible Self app, which will signpost you to the correct information for immediate expert advice. Those of you who are listening on one of the podcast platforms, the My Possible Self app is completely free to download. You can access all of the content, so you don't need to worry about it costing you anything. If you found this episode helpful, please do subscribe and leave a review and share it with your friends. And to find and follow us on social media, we are most active on Instagram, and you can find us at My Possible Self. And I've been at Radio Gabby. Until the next one, do take care. Bye for now.